The reason I'm here to talk about the grant, obviously that was, I saw it on the agenda, so I figured I'd come in and say something about it. You know, we wrote a letter earlier, when it was about a month ago, really the EDC is moving after this grant, for a couple reasons. Just in general, feeling is, anytime we have any way or any chance of getting any money for anything in this town to help develop it, we should be out there writing a grant. We just came back from, the annual EDC, or monthly EDC meeting down in Cranford, and Terry Elton and Sue Beckman. I mean, the real topic of discussion was not grants, but it fills up a lot of the time about how often, we all have grant writers for one thing we don't. That's a very important thing. And the other in general is, there's a lot of talk about be business friendly to us. Basically, the focus is on making regulations simpler. But being business friendly is a lot more than just loosening regulations for developers. It's showing people that we're actually out there trying to do something to get something done, whether it's for a private person, a private firm, or for the town or whatever. You go through this, I don't know how many people have been through the broker, walking through Unilever property with Damon Bowers and Christian Wakefield with a developer up there. Within the first 3 minutes, it's wastewater talking about it. And this reverse osmosis system is only good if people drink Vaseline, because it's basically for a catalytic cracker. It's a state-of-the-art reverse osmosis system that's actually worthless when it comes to doing any kind of development for human beings. So it has to be done there. I mean, that's a huge problem for this guy. And Bowers, whether he's a good broker or not, he brings it up. So what we've got is a problem here, and from anybody that's walking around in this thing, with these people trying to act like we can handle it for you, we've got to do something more to say, we hear you, that there is a problem. It'd be really nice to say, we're doing something about it. Even if we don't get the damn grant, it'd be nice to be able to say, we're applying for a grant, we're getting some money in, whether it's a 10% match or the other way to go. It just makes us look like we want to do things out there. I mean, if there's anything we can possibly do in this town to make people look like we want to get something done, want to make them come in, want to mitigate the brownfields, want to have regulations changed, we don't have some proof for it. Just quit arguing about it all the time. I mean, I just strenuously, EDC, speaking for a lot of personal stuff, but the EDC is unanimously for doing this. And any other grant we get a chance to get, anything, any money coming into this town, we don't have a lot of money anymore. It's just a simple, seems to be a slam dunk thing.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to look to have some of the experts talk as we actually Good morning. How are you today? All right. Any other subject that somebody wanted to bring up other than the grant at this time? In order to start off the discussion, I guess we need a motion to approve the authorizing resolution for the 2017 Responsible Growth Transit-Oriented Development Grant Program.
Second.
Okay. Now we get into the discussion phase.
So basically, we're going in and doing some soil testing, if we get the grant.
Right. So I guess for the record, I'm John Guszkowsky, the town's consultant planner.
Thank you for being here, John.
Happy to be here. Yeah, so if we get the grant, it would be soil testing and investigation and a complete design of a system, and at least initiating the process of running it through the DEP permitting engine. And basically, as John pointed out, both the property owner or the property owner's agents and potential developers pretty much agree that the single largest factor, and I think I probably repeat this 75 times in the narrative of the grant, the single largest factor preventing the successful redevelopment or to preventing developers from getting deep into their acquisition process is the uncertainty that's created by the lack of septic system and the state's regulatory process for it. There was, I mean, as John said, there is an existing reverse osmosis system. Back in 2000, 2001, Stevens did an investigation for Unilever, and they had preliminarily scoped out about a 7,500 gallon a day, septic system, leach field, sort of traditional system, sort of up in the northwest corner of the site as it heads towards North High Street. that was never sort of run through any sort of official process. And also, it's quite a bit too small. I mean, that 7,500 gallons a day would handle, if Unilever was sort of an active, you know, commercial or warehouse entity. If you're looking to redevelop it with any kind of residential, mixed-use, retail, business, 7,500 gallons is nowhere near adequate. So, you know, all these studies that we've got are, number one, old and far too small. And a potential developer we've seen is extremely unlikely to sort of make that 2-year commitment of running through the regulatory process to an uncertain outcome. You know, at the end of the day, the DEP might say, yeah, we don't really like this. And, you know, your cost uncertainty for that 2 years after, you know, trying to acquire a $4 million property or whatever it is it really just puts the, you know, wet blanket on the transactions. So, I'm sorry, just a little quick. So, you know, again, obviously, it's not a piece of town property. We don't control it, nor is the town in position to acquire it for their own ends. So the ability to kind of have the town put the thumb on the scale is relatively limited. Obviously, the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on improving the regulations to make a more friendly regulatory environment for it. That's one thing we can do. The other thing we can do is, you know, take advantage of these grant opportunities and, you know, do the investigation that neither the buyer nor the seller is particularly inclined to do.
So the Unilever is on board with this?
What's that?
Unilever's on board?
They are not opposed to it. I spoke with Colin. I spoke with Colin Blair yesterday a couple of times through this process. Colin represents them on a real estate standpoint down in New York, New Jersey, and he's still actively in discussions with potential buyers. There are some people interested. He doesn't want to complicate that, so they're not sort of leaping forward and saying, we're super excited about this, but he sees it as positive, and they're not opposed to it.
Because years ago, we went to them to do subsurface soil investigation on the property, and they were absolutely against it, 110% against it.
Yeah.
I'd like to add something else to this. I got a phone call yesterday from John, I think you know, Principal Michael Massimino. He's with a real estate investment and development company known as Alliance Realty Capital. And last week, he informed me about this yesterday. Last week, they made a formal offer to purchase the property. And it was initially well received. It has to go through a long, drawn-out process. But he's very hopeful that this will go forward.
This grant proposal?
No,
Sale, okay.
Sale of the property. This is also a little compounded by the fact that Unilever International is for sale. Kraft Foods just made a run at them for a multi-billion-dollar offer that was turned down. So they're in a mode of, watching their pennies at this point, being careful what they do at this point, because they truly are for sale. And then to find out about this. Now, I want to be like somebody from Missouri, I want to find out that this is actually
But
going
also,
through.
when he was talking to us, it was kind of like the takeaway. They're just buying it almost like an investment because they weren't aware of anything. We showed them the plan. We gave them the Cecil Group plan. I gave them my last copy of that, by the way. I could use more money to print another one, $50 a piece. And it seemed to him that, we don't know long term, and one of the things that Bruce and myself and even Eric was in the meeting was to store boats there right now. That kind of thing, because it defray the cost of having the property. It's 300,000 square feet. It's a great place. You can store very expensive boats in there, but the long-term thing, we've said, this is transformative to the town. We like something more than becoming a boat storage building there. And that's where, to weave this grant back into it, of even if they did mind to say, hey, maybe now that you're a partner, we can work together on fixing the wastewater, because that was a concern to him. And you certainly can buy the property, and if you don't put any human beings in there, you don't have to worry about anything. Brownfield, anything. You just put building stuff in there. And, as a town, we would love that 26 acres to be more than a boat storage facility. So, I mean, it does kind of work into if they did buy it, we could.
But and also they're starting to buy into our story, which
Yes.
is, now they understand that we're
We're
interested
pretty
in timely
yeah.
mixed use there, so.
We're pretty
That is the
direct. with it.
direction that they want to go in as well.
So,
And they actually have done some homework now on the wastewater aspect of this.
So,
The
anyway, it
timing could be good,
could be very
but
good.
I just want you all to be aware of that. You know, a number of us had heard that they were interested in this property, but it was quite a surprise yesterday to find out that they've actually now made a formal proposal. Right?
And if I might, I was in the meeting with
Right.
Mr. Massimino as well, about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Yeah, my impression was that he was very open to working with the town on this. And the other thing I would just note is that, you know, if you choose to endorse this, submitting this application, it's not as if we endorse it on, or we submit it on Friday and you know, get the check cut on Monday. This is an attenuated process, so it's likely decisions won't be even made until after the summer. So there's a lot of things to kind of move forward and continue the conversation before the town actually has to make the decision to accept or not accept the grant should it come
And
along.
this is work that Unilever would never do on their own.
They have no, well, I mean, at some point they may have the incentive to do it, but the problem is, as I perceive it, they don't control the future use of the property. You know, they don't know what they'd be designing to.
It clearly can't stand the way it stands.
No, there might ultimately be a contingency or something for them to do some of the studies in a purchase and sale agreement, but I don't think they're gonna go out and do it on their own, not knowing
But,
who they're gonna sell to.
My sense is my sense from discussing it with Unilever and hearing from other people is that Unilever sort of wants a clean break. They want to walk away. They don't want to
As is.
any contingencies, any liability. They want to walk away from the property and not, you know, have like a 2-year look back or something like that. So in
Change their
terms of
attitude a little bit, because initially, when the Reed Company and others were interested in that property, they would not sign a hold harmless agreement where the responsibility went back to them. Now they want to unload it if they can.
I just want to bring something up. So, in a former life, I was chair of the Water Pollution Control Commission. I just noticed in the grant document that you're talking about potentially bringing in maybe other properties.
Correct?
So just be aware,
Yeah.
and I think I would like this to be, whoever you choose to do the study, to be, you know, aware of. There was a plan years ago, I'm thinking now going back probably 15 years, where there would be a discharge at Unilever for other properties as well on Main Street, and the discharge was to be at the Hammonasset because you can't discharge at Unilever necessarily for the amount of gallons per day that you're talking about. So whoever does this study needs to think down the road because Friends of Hammonasset is going to block anything to the Hammonasset.
There was a mob on the
And
bridge.
this
that day.
board, not when I was here, but this board actually did put forth a policy that there would be no discharge to the Hammonasset. And my guess is, based on the work we've done on water pollution and the soils there, anything more than what you're talking about, you know, gallons per day, is going to have to be discharged off-site.
Well, wait a minute,
So-
now, there is technology today that can
Well,
put
and that's the thing.
50,000 gallons per
Right,
day.
Carol, and I'm talking about
disposal
discharge, I'm
system.
talking about discharge on site.
Yeah,
To
now that's what I'm
groundwater.
talking about.
But you could go with a deep system, for sure, on
Yeah.
site, which
This is
wouldn't
what
need a discharge
you're
at all.
talking about.
But you're talking, you know, there could be either or. So I'm just saying that if it comes down to a discharge to the groundwater, you have to talk about soil, obviously review soil studies, but just know, you know, that there's opposition if a Hammonasset discharge
And
is
then
ultimately.
Lynn and I sat at Unilever, and we're on a conference call with the people at Unilever, with people in New Jersey. Mr. Dolan was there, I believe, because we were talking about doing subsurface investigation in there, and there was no way in hell gonna allow us to go in and do test
So
borings
just,
out
it
there
should just be in a.
because of the concern of contamination.
Mhm.
Because I'm guessing that what's going to happen is once there's a system in place there, Route 1, you know, because the current facilities plan isn't going to allow for future development most likely, and I think in what I hear is development on Route 1 is dependent on folks coming in and saying, just like Unilever, there's a wastewater problem, I don't want to be here. So you're going to hear people say, well, if Unilever's going to do this great system, we want to tie in. And that's what happened 15 years ago, and then they said, oh, we'll just discharge to him and asset.
And the
So-
state was gonna pay for that pipe down Route 1.
Because it's not a bad idea to tie in part of Route 1, because then you can actually,
Do you have anything to add?
The whole.
Yeah, I'm back here.
Yeah.
you're right,
Anything to add to
right?
this?
Bruce, do you mind?
I just want to say one thing first. I was originally told in an email that this was just going to be originally confined to Unilever. So I naturally, you sent me an email, I believe, talking about this. And I said, I believe that I want WPCC to be an active player in this, to take some responsibility, do some homework, do some research, wrap their arms around this thing. And frankly, John was hopeful of the same thing. Now, somewhere along the line, a presentation was made at a regular meeting of WPCC. The head of planning wasn't there. The chairman of planning and zoning wasn't there. But apparently, WPCC decided not to take the ownership role, if you will, but you did endorse the plan to move forward. You know, John and I were a little disappointed that, you didn't, do a little more work on this.
I can explain
I
that.
think they
Yeah,
have
it's easy to explain.
So, now, I understand, and so does John, your main focus is handling the current wastewater issues. But we thought with some of the expertise from your group that, you would share some of your knowledge. So, go ahead.
So let me see where to start. I have a couple of main items here. I think a lot of the history of any of us that have been around 10 or 15 years here in town that we connect with the Unilever site has to do with their struggles of industrial wastewater treatment meeting standards, and then the discharges to the underground pipe to Hayes Creek. So, I'm familiar with that. I was familiar with the work of the WPCC when I first came to town. I was invited to be a participant, and I've done some homework on behalf of my group recently. I went through all the old reports that I was able to, obtain from the land use files. I was able to obtain from CDM Smith's repository of electronic documents, and my own analysis as a geologist looking at the mapping. And I know it's complicated, but I know that the amount of acreage we're talking about there was, the entire property was not looked at back in 2001. Unilever specifically looked at a piece of land on the northern part of the site, which has a completely different geological characteristics than the rest of the site, and didn't get the answer that they had hoped. And they struggled for years with a combined wastewater of both their their domestic sewage and their industrial. So for years and years and years, that stigma lingered with this property. And in more recent times, through ad hoc committees and Cecil Group committee, different things that I've been invited to speak and participate in, I was able to communicate that once we did our homework as part of the most recent facilities plan, we found out that soils on that side of town, past sort of our dividing line, John Street extension, were a lot better than what had previously been understood. And I guess due to a lack of communication by my group with the other planning groups here in town, they were not able to communicate that information to people looking to develop this site. So once I was able to bring that information to the table and point out that yes, we do have a facilities plan for downtown. Yes, we are specifically charged under the 1997 order with addressing one specific area. That area was whittled down based on an initial screening process of properties here in town that were looking for accessibility to properties, acreage of properties, and the ability to handle large swaths of town wastewater needs. So, where does that leave us? Where I believe that leaves us is a property that has not necessarily been completely assessed for just capacity in general. So capacity for subsurface wastewater, whether it's treated wastewater or not treated wastewater. And based on whatever that capacity turns out to be, I see there to be potentially the opportunity to use that effort and the town's money spent already on doing work in this area to work together. There's a distinct possibility that that there could be, we only have 10,000 gallons downtown right now. If you were to develop downtown, you'd have much more than that. Our recent experience with actually two experiences that we had with the Post and Main development in Old Saybrook. John Allen might say, why them and not us? But we were invited by both the manufacturer of the system out there, AquaPoint, to do a tour of that facility, and at the Connecticut Association of Water Pollution Control Authorities, we listened to a speaker, Stuart Fairbank from engineering firm in Old Saybrook, tell us that it took a while, but that piece of property down there that folks didn't think could be developed the way that it is developed has now been, in a rather small footprint, all things considered, designed for 45,000 gallons per day, which is a pretty big number if you look at the largest pieces of our current facilities plan being at not an order of magnitude more than that, a little bit more than that.
That's 180 residences.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's colossal, and their system is about the size of the parking lot behind Shore TV. So it's incredible what they're doing with wastewater technology these days.
So I personally saw an opportunity when I was approached, I believe first by Mike and then by Bruce. My at least interpretation, wrong or right, was that here was an opportunity for the town, and it was not clear to me at the time, and I'll take complete blame for the head of credit, that it was going to have to be a WPCC only led effort, when I knew that the consultant planner was sort of directly employed by the Board of Selectmen. So I had some back and forth with Mike, which I thought was appropriate. I had some back and forth with yourself, and we decided to talk about it as an actual board. We talked about it as within our commission, kind of informally, and then had a meeting where I thought it was appropriate to. I ran into Christine in an informal setting and said, "Hey, this is something that's on our table. I know quite a bit about it because I've been involved in transit-oriented development work as an environmental consultant, but I don't know a bit about the history other than what I've heard from John and from Mike and kind of indirectly from Bruce, because you and I didn't have sit-down conversations." I made a decision, right or wrong, based on whatever the group's perception is, to ask Christine just as a person to come and speak to the group, not as a presentation for planning and zoning, but just as a person familiar with that type of development. Because as a Water Pollution Control Commission, we as a group have not been involved in that type of work. So even though I have a little bit of background in it, I invited Christine to come and speak to our group as a, you know how apolitical we are. We're not a political commission compared to many.
This is not a political commission.
Yeah, so we have that ability to sit down and without all of that history, and discuss these things. So I hope that answers your question and kind of buttresses our decision to support the project in any way
We're going to
possible.
ask you a bunch of questions.
Okay.
That is John and Gary.
Yeah, I'll end my soliloquy.
Okay, thank you. I also got a call yesterday from the executive director of the River Company, who informed me that they wrote a letter to the Office of Policy supporting or endorsing.
That letter should be in the packet.
He also mentioned that it turns out that several cogs are in competition with us on this. In fact, I guess there's over, so far, 21 towns applying for grants in this particular category, so it's highly competitive.
I'm sorry, how many?
At least 21 towns, which is probably not unusual for you.
What's the total funding now?
I don't think it's.
They didn't put a pot of money in
I
it.
think it's probably
Well,
about
they said-
10 million.
They said 10 million, and the grants funding separately will be anywhere from $10,000 to $1 million.
Go up to 2 million, right?
Up to
That's-
two.
Yeah, up to
For
30.
individual projects, so.
We're only going for 55.
The hope is that we're an easy, golden good throw.
Is it 10% match?
15.
There is no required match.
Okay.
There's no requirement, it says 15
What's this
there.
total grantee match, 15,000?
No, it says, there's no match, but it does say that
It's the-
you'll be on the hook for some expenses on this. So I'm hoping those will be in kind expenses.
Right, so the match, I don't know, does it say, where do you see 15%?
On page 8.
Of the application.
Oh, 15, well, I mean, we're proposing to match 15,000. That's largely in kind.
So like
There's no-
your work could be
Exactly.
interpreted as.
There's no required match, you're just,
There is no required match, but provided match, increases your scoring, basically, the likelihood of receiving the grant. And if I could, something that had been brought up, sort of a question that turned into Matt's response, about tying in other properties on Route 1 or in Clinton Center. This is a little bit of sort of wordsmithing, given that the category of the grant is transit-oriented development and responsible growth. And our transit stop is the train station, and in the packet you see a map of properties within a quarter mile. Obviously Unilever is the most significant, and I tried to gear the grant narrative as much as possible towards focusing on the redevelopment potential of Unilever itself.
But it does extend to everything west of Wall Street?
The transit-oriented area does. Again, I think to the point that Matt made, we don't know what the capacity is on the Unilever property, given the geology and the new technologies that have arisen over the last 15 years. It is possible, although optimistic, that Unilever, that the soils there and the technology could support not only the Unilever redevelopment, but also receive, wastewater that would facilitate redevelopment along Route 1 as well. I tried to write the grant in a way that neither explicitly said this would happen, nor shut down that possibility. I think in a perfect world, we could figure out a combination of soils and system that there's excess capacity that would facilitate Unilever and tie things in. That's going to be, down the road, up to the town and up to the future user, the future owner of Unilever. But, in a grant, I tried to thread the needle a little bit.
Okay. So, Gary, do you have anything to add?
This started, I think, about 4 months ago with you and Mike and myself and John. A couple things, I'm 100% for the grant. A couple things that concern me, and I've been saying it for almost 2 months at Planning and Zoning, is that, we want to go to the dance, but we don't have anybody to dance with. We're going to write a grant based on, from what I've heard today, a guy saying, not even Unilever, just the representative for Unilever saying, oh yeah, we'll let you go on the property. But we don't have it in writing. We don't have that person here. We don't have an email, I'm guessing, saying any of that. So that concerns me a little bit.
We don't have the grant.
And we don't have the grant. So what if, and by what Willie said, what if we get the grant and then they say, no, we don't want it? I mean, I guess no harm, no foul, maybe, but the communication between boards and commissions seems to not be working very well. And
I would agree.
that's kind of what I'm hearing here.
Right.
I'm kind of confused, and Matt, respectfully, that nobody knows more about this than you in the room, and you're the one who doesn't want to have it. I mean,
Well, I would argue that.
yeah, the other issue is that we unfortunately had somebody not directed by our own Planning and Zoning Commission coming to a talk that was invited by you and to say, well, they were there on their own person, they weren't there as a representative, but they were there talking specifically about what they know about. I'll give you a for instance.
I had specific questions.
Right, I'll give you a for instance. If I go to EDC, if John Allen says, we'd like you to come to EDC and talk all about transit-oriented development, I'm going to go to the chairman. And I'm not bringing this up for any other reason other than if we want to get development in downtown, EDC needs to be working, hand in hand with planning and zoning, and you guys need to be working hand in hand with EDC. And it seems a little fragmented. But just as an observation,
Well,
the pieces seem fragmented.
Communication to me was,
And then we come here and we try to put all the pieces together
yeah.
at the last, quote, the last minute.
If I may speak. If I may speak.
Sure.
I'm actually the chair of the ad hoc committee who's working for the Unilever project. I've also been involved in the process of the Cecil Group study. So when I went to that presentation at WPCC, it was to update them on the ad hoc committee and what they're currently working on, the recommendation of the consultant planner to pursue this grant. I had the information from that meeting, from the consultant planner, and all I did is regurgitate that. Questions asked really circulated through WPCC and their ultimate charge, and whether or not they should be expanding the charge. That's not anything Planning and Zoning Commission can do. It's up to them. So at the end of the day, they supported this grant. Whether or not they want to take it on as a specific charge, working with the consultant planner, writing it, that is up to them. But the information I can provide is from the ad hoc committee. The planning committee is not in charge of the ad hoc committee working on the Unilever grant or Unilever proposal. That is why it's there. Just for clarification.
Christine, what is that ad hoc committee?
It's the ad hoc committee that's working on the Unilever site based on the Cecil Group study.
There's nothing in that study that we're looking for from this grant? Or?
That, the main focus of that ad hoc committee is basically drafting zoning regulations. Because again, it's an ad hoc subcommittee of planning and zoning, and I can let Mike address this. But it's mostly regulatory.
So, Bruce, all right, Tom?
Sure.
All right, so we formed this ad hoc subcommittee to address the Cecil Group study to try to bring the regulations in line with what the Cecil Group study recommended, which was to keep the existing uses but broaden the uses of the property. We had a subcommittee meeting with Christine, Chris Anaskowicz was there, and John brought up the grant, I believe at that time, if I'm correct, and suggested this was something we could pursue because it would be beneficial to Unilever, that site, and to also spur development possibly downtown, either by that site just being redeveloped, or if you have the capacity to tie in other existing businesses, because the former West End study showed that a lot of the lot sizes downtown are very small. They're unable to really be developed into what people have come to Charette's talk about restaurants. They want to see all these uses that are impossible unless you're able to accumulate multiple landowners coming together so you can put a system on and increase property size. So this seemed at the time to be a no-brainer. John Allen was at that meeting, and that's sort of where it got this swirling kickoff, I guess.
And I did respond to the developers saying, the Cushman and Wakefield saying, you got a big problem here, folks, with your wastewater. So when that kind of spurred, I think, John to realize, hey, there's some grants out there that close June 23rd, so this one kind of accelerated.
And I think John had already been thinking of this, and that was something that had already been discussed, so I think it just spurred it along further. So that's how we got to this point.
So I think this was kind of my point earlier. There's a lot of studies, sorry, wasn't it?
No, go ahead.
There's a lot of studies out there, and there's a lot of grants that we have received. So there's a Cecil Group study, there's the West End study, there's information from CDM on that site, there's water pollution control. I think we just need to be cognizant that we use our money wisely if we get the grant money, and make sure that all those studies get brought in. There's a lot of work's been done over the last, 15 years, and Unilever's been tied into that, so I guess that was my point earlier.
I think
To clarify.
Also, I would point out that during my conversation with Sam Gold yesterday, he made it perfectly clear. So you have to pick your shots to what you think you can reasonably, and Willie makes this point all the time, what you think you can reasonably get an award on. The grants are fewer, they're smaller. They're all highly competitive now. And like Liz pointed out, we've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in this area. And I want to make sure we think we have a really realistic shot at winning this if we go forward. We still are going to have more questions. If we could begin that unless anybody else wants to say anything. Okay. Willie, do you have?
I'm just saying, I 100% behind applying for the grant. I think the dialogue's got to be started with Unilever formally about getting access to the property if in fact we get the grant, because there could be some stuff that they don't want people to see up there, and that's why they weren't going to let us do it years ago.
And you really don't want to turn down a grant once you get it.
No.
It's just not a good thing.
Right,
to do.
and
So-
unfortunately, you don't want to think about having to try to repurpose it if we get it, and then they pull the rug out from under us. That's a whole other process.
But what we're here to decide today is whether to allow this to go forward, and as far as I'm concerned, I think we have to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I have some more questions. So, John? I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that the wastewater review and study will include not just mixed use, but manufacturing, be it very light or not. Has that been considered?
Right, so I guess in answer to that question and also your question, or your point about using existing studies or previous investments, I mean, light manufacturing from a wastewater standpoint, unless you're doing some sort of filtration or something like that, doesn't necessarily generate the same volumes of wastewater as residential.
Unless it's a
residential,
unless it's a brewery.
right? Residential restaurants, things like that are your much higher users. All right, in the town of Putnam where I work, there's a light manufacturing thing where they build filters and use literally a third of the town's water. So some light manufacturing is extremely water intensive. But so given that most light manufacturing is a lighter water user or wastewater generator than residential, it would sort of not be a problem to sort of step back to that lighter user.
Okay.
We're talking about investigating essentially maximum capacity of what the soils could support. And to that end, I think exactly we would want to use the Unilever study, and the Unilever study is actually quite, the Cecil Group study is actually quite extensive about numbers of units and square footages, and then it's sort of an easy next step to say, okay, what's the wastewater generated by these build-out numbers that Cecil Group is providing. So I think we would, in large part, use that Cecil Group's build-out to kind of figure out if we can size the system to that level.
And soils.
Right. But it really is about figuring out what the capacity of that property is to deal with wastewater.
Okay.
Bruce, could I add one thing to that?
Sure.
You mentioned the capacity to handle wastewater. One thing we've struggled with as a WPCC for years is the distinction between handling wastewater as all of us have ever known it, which is putting raw wastewater into the ground in a septic system type of fashion, or just needing to get rid of treated wastewater. And in this day and age, as John could probably tell you, treating the wastewater is almost calling up and saying, I want box A. Can you deliver that to my site? And these things are pre-engineered, and I don't think the treatment system itself is something that would chase away a developer. It's the where's the water go next?
Well, that's.
And have they relaxed the standards, the 1.6 gallons per square foot standard, have they relaxed that to increase
I
that?
think they would.
I think that's completely doable with the
Because
state.
we talked about that for years with different properties in town, and they were gonna hold us even if it was treated to 1.6 gallons per square foot.
Yeah,
That's negotiable.
they've loosened up their reins on that one big time.
You sure?
It's
You know,
It's
we
what-
had that many years?
They have the latitude to do so.
They do, I know, I
They
just,
do have-
well, some of the old dogs are gone up there, so that may help.
Yeah.
But
Some of
that
those
was my
little
point with the
dogs,
human
they're not
acid,
dogs at all.
where are you gonna put it? And if you don't have the ability with the soil types on the site, then you're gonna have to go somewhere,
The
right?
thing here, I mean, the
But that's what the
technology
study-
that exists today did not exist 10 years ago. They, the filtration and leaching and treatment that goes into wastewater is the most complex science I've run into since chemistry.
I totally get that.
It is very, very different from traditional
But
thinking.
Carol, it's a
And from
perception.
traditional Connecticut thinking. The technology that larger industry is being allowed to use has much wider acceptance in other parts of the country than it does here. So, I mean,
But
there
it's
are things
perception,
that you're
people
not
don't
aware of
understand.
that exist today that can deal with much larger quantities of water in a much smaller space, so.
Bruce,
Still gotta go somewhere.
Right, and the perception, the
Yeah,
public
but what
perception is
comes
treated
out
versus
at
not
the-
treated. Yeah, but Carol, I've been
They don't
fighting
care
this
about
for years. People don't understand the difference between treated water and untreated water.
That's true.
The effluent that comes out of your septic versus the treated water that
Right.
that is
That's what I'm-
discharged, but you can fight that all day long. You and I understand that. People don't get it.
The
It's
treated
like
water
when
can
we- when
be
we tried to
Fight the
go,
human acid.
when we tried to go to the Elliott site, treated water. There was no winning that argument. I'm just saying that it's perception.
Right.
Whether it's water that you would drink versus water that's not been
And
treated,
that's like
going
we
into
got
contaminant, you're gonna
128,000
have,
gallons
that's
a
all
day.
I'm saying is that keep it in the back of your mind. We know that we get, the public perception has to be factored into the study because ultimately down the road, as you know, facilities plan, we're gonna get pushback, right? So
Yeah, and
it
with
just needs to be considered is all I'm saying.
Whether it's Water's Edge or
I totally
Clinton
agree.
Crossing.
Finish.
I totally agree.
Yes, sir.
just a question, in listening to this, wouldn't environmental testing have to go hand in hand? Because at a site like that, just putting a backhoe in the ground at that site, wouldn't you want to test a small amount before you even stuck a backhoe? I don't know, it just seems reasonable that a petroleum factory for the last 100 years, you can say, well, that land up there was untouched. I doubt it, because going back then, they used to bury stuff back then. So how does that work, John? I mean, we're talking about two different things. One is soil testing to see if the soils are going to be okay and the technology's there. But as we found out at the Joel School site, when they stuck one backhoe in the ground, pulled out a bunch of garbage, and they put it right back.
Same thing happened at the old Morgan when he began to test that site. There's all
So
kinds
would
of
this-
garbage and boulders.
Would this grant
rock
cover
ledge.
that?
Boulders are right.
Cover the.
I can't even imagine that you'd be allowed to dig on the site
That's what
That's what
without
we're-
getting permission
Is there a phase one or something?
Oh, yeah.
from somebody, because you don't know what's on the site.
Yeah,
We've
no,
been
it's-
on the site.
It's much deeper than phase one.
The permission of the owner is critical to this. And as Willie said, we'll need to continue dialogue with Unilever
I was gonna say-
or, knock on wood, the future owner.
Well, who's got the liability?
Well, that's why you need somebody right from Unilever.
They might not want to open that box.
That was my point is,
That box
we don't want
exists.
that liability.
That box exists regardless, and it may
Yeah.
be the box that causes this to be an official brownfield as it sits and sits and sits longer. It could easily be part of that type of investigation, because we've done drilling, and we've done test pitting, we've done lots of different things throughout the town. So I don't see that necessarily, Gary, as being prohibitive. But, it may, the design may include a soil management component. I know you and I have talked about that in the past, but a soil management component would just be to say that, the contractors that do the drilling have to have this type of training, and whatever comes out of the ground, unless it's, glowing or hazardous waste, can go right back in the ground. That's typically how DEP handles the investigation of these types of
Don't
sites.
forget, David Mack had done 2 studies before his contract. We never saw the results of it because he paid for it and it was between him and Unilever, but he did 2 studies on the soils there and it did not scare him away.
No.
I mean, because we talked with him, we did a postmortem on it too. Was there something there that you're not telling us? No. It was really the ice sheet kind of investors.
It was more,
It was money, but he did 2 there. So, I mean, it does reside. And the other real overall question is, these are problems we have, but we have to solve them. Otherwise, there'll be nothing but sumac trees growing up there. I don't like sumac.
I want to point out one more thing. The presentation piece talks about dollars being, in the presentation, guys, in the presentation piece, it talks about money being available for environmental cleanup. And I've talked to Jeep.
In what presentation piece, I'm sorry?
There's a presentation piece that goes along with this Unilever
Oh, that's a-
strategy.
Right, that's the Cecil Group study.
Right. But it says there's money available for environmental cleanup. And clearly DEEP has said, with a large international company that is as wealthy as this one, there will be no contribution from the state or the feds for the cleanup of that site. As long as somebody like Unilever owns it.
yeah, it changed all.
It
But it
changes
changes
the
the ownership.
ownership.
Brand
And in
new.
fact, if somebody should buy it, and they default, and then years later, this thing gets settled out, and somehow the town is able to acquire it, then in fact, there will be a lot of money available from the state and the feds to clean it up. So I just want to make sure that the stuff is accurate. If you're going to submit something else along with the application, maybe you're not even submitting it, I don't know. I want it correct.
Right, yeah, just in terms of availability, yeah, and that's a component of the Cecil Group study that they always include in these sort of overviews or master plans that, oh yeah, there's plenty of money for your next steps, and, but if I might, Mr. First Selectman, before there's a vote taken, if I might, I received an email from Tim Guerra, who's a representative on planning and zoning, wrote to me as a private citizen, asking if I could read a very short note into the record because he couldn't be here. So it's, dear Board of Selectmen, since I cannot be in attendance today, I wanted to express my thoughts regarding the grant for septic study of Unilever property. It's my understanding that the Cecil Group did reference an initial study begun in 2000. However, it's also my understanding that it was never completed with any substantial resolution. Therefore, I think it's imperative that we move forward with procuring this grant. Now that we seem to be getting closer to a possible upgrade of our train station, having regulations updated for this property and the surrounding area with recommendations completed for septic system solutions, we stand to position ourselves to act quickly when the time comes to solicit potential buyers for the property. Regards, Tim Guerra.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're ready?
Yeah.
What is the deadline, by the way?
33rd.
Submission is Friday.
Okay. So if there are no further discussion points here, are we ready to take a vote?
The motion.
Make sure you do. I'm just making sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried.